ask the clerk to introduce the item, after which council will be given an opportunity to ask questions of staff. Then ask the applicant to present their application, following which I'll invite public input. If you'd like to address council, please come up to the microphone and give your name and your address. And please limit your comments to 5 minutes. After everyone has had an opportunity to speak, I'll ask the applicant to return the microphone if there are any outstanding questions, and then I'll turn it over to council for a decision. So with that, we'll introduce the first item, please, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This first item is 998 Gorge Road West. It's a development permit amendment. The report of the manager of current planning is recommending that council approve the amendments to the development permit for changes to the form, character, and number of units for the proposed independent living seniors residence and community care facility. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I'd like to call the applicant up to the microphone for 998 Gorge Road West.
Your Worship, Council, staff, my name is John Kaharchuk. I am Senior Vice President of Development for Campion Property Group. We're one of the 2 co-venture partners in the Saanich Senior Living Project. Our partner, Bay Ridge Senior Housing, is responsible for the operations, and Campion is responsible for constructing the project. So I'm here before you to address the report from planning that we've met many of you to discuss in advance. We originally had been given approval for this project both on zoning and development permit approximately a year ago, and during that period of time, in our efforts to move ahead with the development of the project, there have been many changes that meet the aspirations of the community and council and operational perspective. And what they've resulted in is a significant increase in cost from where we were when we were last before you, on the order of 35% more than what we anticipated. And so we've spent, rather than be in a position to start construction, we have been diligently refining the design of the project and reviewing all operational aspects to basically improve the constructability and operation of the project without affecting the aspirations that were expressed to us that we're seeking to complete. So, for example, the project has a continuum of care which provides for a resident to, once they enter into the project, to remain through a change in their well-being through assisted living and potentially dementia care. And the implication of that is that we've gone from a project that was conceived as wood frame that becomes non-combustible, so concrete in its entirety, and the cost impact of that is significant. And there are many other factors like that that contributed to the rather large increase in cost that we're facing. So we took a number of things, certainly the aspirations that were expressed to us by this council, the previous council, planning requirements and so forth, and community aspirations, and we've retained all those. But what we did was we worked behind the walls to basically improve, as I say, the constructability of the building and to result in something that for all intents and purposes, from the exterior expression, will not appear changed. However, there are a couple of things that in our review of those proposed changes with planning, it was felt that those needed to come back to council as they were somewhat different than the development permit drawings. And those in particular are the roof and the extent of stone cladding on the exterior of the building. Basically, through the package that we've provided in our discussions, we've shown how, in fact, there's very little impact on the form and construction of the building. It's basically they are just refinements, but they allow us to do a lot more in terms of the construction of the building. And the net result of that is that we maintain a better level of affordability for our rental rates. And I can say that with so significant an increase in cost, the implication of that was that a significant portion of our prospective clientele would no longer be able to afford to live here. And so, as I say, we've taken to heart keeping the environmental aspects, the Build Green goals, the provisions for future solar, passive solar, the continuum of care, and many other things. All of those have been kept the same. So we don't ask lightly, but we really do need council to allow us to proceed on the basis that's been presented, because it has a very significant impact on how we can move forward with the project.
Thank you. Questions from council? Councilor Plant.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Kaharchuk, if you wouldn't mind coming back, I'd like to ask you a question, two questions. If you don't mind me referring to the package in our possession, the second to last page, one of the differences that we see in the streetscapes is removal of what appear to be 4 square ground level windows. And I'm just curious what's going on in that. I'm sorry to be so specific, okay, but I'm wondering if you are aware of what I'm referring to.
Okay, so I have Christine Lintoff, the project architect, with me as well. I'm sorry I didn't introduce her at the beginning.
Of course.
So we can address the specific question.
So my assumption is you're looking at the Gorge Road West?
The elevation, June 15 compared to the October 213.
Yep.
For Gorge.
And you're looking specifically
bottom right-hand corner.
On the right-hand corner. Yeah, it really comes down to a refinement of the window of the fenestration generally, in terms of the proportions and the character of the windows. And you'll see in the proposed elevation that there is a more consistent approach to the size of the windows throughout the entire elevation. And what that means, really simplistically, is that we're trying to create variation and articulation in the fenestration by varying the number of windows that are ganged together rather than the individual windows themselves. And what that means is that we effectively are ordering 400 windows that are of similar size or identical size, and they get massaged around throughout the building. And it's a really cost-effective way of creating economies and putting in the pieces that make up the building. So when you see something as specific as you've highlighted, what we've done is we've reduced that extra window type in the overall fenestration, so you don't see those 4 windows anymore. So it's a removal of those windows in an attempt to simplify the number of window types that we have throughout the building. Okay. Does that make sense?
Oh, very, very much so, actually. I just would be curious, without asking you to go and show me which page shows the ground plan, what will be behind that area that will now look like not have any natural light?
It's the parking entrance. So we don't feel too bad about removing those windows. It was, and it was kind of a funny little room above the parking ramp that, yeah.
The lowest room.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. And I just would ask, since we have the applicant here, a second question, if I may, Mr. Mayor, through you, is just any update on the Brookman building, on the plans beyond, if it's still going to be used as a cafe, and is it going to be managed by, I want to say, Baybridge, or is it likely to be put out to a community?
Your Worship, to Councillor Plant. So we've had some discussions in the community with regard to the local operation, and I would say that one party that had expressed an interest, we were discouraged by the Community Association actually in moving ahead with them. It still is very much a consideration that we would actually run it directly ourselves.
One way or another, though, is it safe to say that the community will have access to that?
Yes, absolutely. Yes, it is fully intended as being to both to meet a community aspiration, being basically memorializing the sense of place and the activity that happened before, as well as providing another venue, if you will, for interaction between our project and the public at large.
Great. Thank you for answering that question. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Any questions? Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If I could, I'm just trying to look at the new rendition. Are you removing fencing along Admiral's Road and the gorge?
There is a change along that frontage, and the change primarily relates to introduction of the memory care neighborhood along the Admiral's side. And so we've eliminated patios that were there before because we can't have accessible patios from that neighborhood. There's also, engineering department had asked that we basically relook at our groundwater, how we handle groundwater on the site, and we've introduced rain gardens along in there. And so that's precipitating some changes along that side. We still do have patio area that's accessible from one of our community amenity rooms. But in terms of the fence, I don't recall.
I'm really more concerned, there's a fair volume of traffic on both these roads, and by removing the fence, what will the ground level suites noise level be at?
So the plan has also changed in that we had some independent supported living suites along that frontage, and they aren't there anymore. Basically, those have moved to what would be the south side of the building, and which abuts an apartment building immediately adjacent to us. And it's predominantly amenity uses along the Admiral's frontage with some of the memory care suites. Most of the memory care amenity is internalized, and one of the courtyards has been dedicated for their express use. So there's a group of suites along that side that would still be potentially exposed to road noise. It is important, however, to bear in mind that we are below the street at that level, and I'm not sure how many meters, a meter and a half or 2? It's about 2 meters at that corner below, and so there's some terracing and extensive landscaping in that corner to buffer anything, as well as we provided some lands for dedication to create a boulevard treatment along that frontage. So there's a fairly healthy green strip along that.
Yeah, I'm just worried, do those windows open?
They do open, yes. They would be on restrictors. All of the memory care and the licensed areas are fully climate controlled, fully air conditioned, but the windows do open. I believe the restrictor would be about 4 inches. Obviously, we have a...
So the fencing you had along Gorge as well has been eliminated?
I don't recall any fencing on the
It's hard to tell.
Color?
It's the color, maybe. Oh, okay.
Yeah, there wasn't actually any fencing along Gorge. The fencing it's along the south property line,
Right.
and then along essentially the project east, where we have a residential property immediately adjacent to us.
Okay, thanks.
Councillor Murdoch, you have your hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the architect. I'm curious, Councillor Plant's point is a question with respect to the windows. We had a sort of offline discussion about the effect it has on the massing by deleting the windows, particularly in that color. And I just wondered if there would be an opportunity to make a color change at that point, or something that may have the effect of not having such a large yellow wall. I mean, I'm not usually one to get hung up on that kind of detail, but it just strikes me when I look at it that walking by, that's going to be a big, solid yellow wall.
Well, I won't argue because it is certainly from the point of view of looking hard on a hard elevation like this. It's really difficult to tell where the plane of that wall actually sits. What I can share with you, and the shadows sort of suggest this, and I apologize, this is a 2D image that you're looking at, but that plane of wall is actually quite back. It's recessed, and it will be recessed in order to deal with just the simple logistic of having to incorporate in an overhead door, etc. So in fact, that plane of wall, its presence on the street and its plainness is perhaps not as present as it appears in the image. Now that being said, one of the tools and techniques that we used in dealing with the articulation of this building was we have taken different coloration for the EFIS, for the stucco system that we're proposing, so that there will be kind of a massaging of those different planes as you move around the building. So I hear your question, and what I can say to you is we will look at that as perhaps an opportunity for us to play down the plainness of what appears to be a solid wall at this point.
I appreciate the effort to do that. I mean, you are going to know better than I what will look good on a finished product, but it just struck me as quite solid, but certainly I'll take your point that this 2D representation is maybe not the best way to view what would eventually be there. Thank you.
Councillor Berglund and then Councillor Sanders.
Thank you very much. I guess we get a little picky here. But when we go to A309, in the original, we have what looks like either two large chimneys or two elevator shafts. And on a lower roof, in a proposed one, we don't have anything up there. What were in those shafts?
So the original massing of the building was that central. So if you look at the plan, there's a central linking piece between the two courtyards. And that central linking piece was a higher roof, and it was an architectural roof. That roof was actually close to 2 stories high, and it allowed us, and it still does, even though it's now down to 1 story, to actually tuck away the mechanical equipment and deal with some of the acoustic sensitivities that were raised early on. So we're still achieving that. But in this, again, the 2D images are really poor at representing what's actually there. But in the 2D image hard on like this, you won't see that roof behind anymore. So we're coming to you today saying we're lowering our application, and it's by about 1.2 meters or 4 feet. And that affects the appearance of those chimneys and that roof behind.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you. Councillor Sanders, you have your hand up.
Thank you. Can I just follow up on Councillor Murdoch's comment about that wall? And I was wondering, is there any opportunity for landscaping, some low plants in there, or planters or something to enhance that area?
Certainly, yeah, it's a nice suggestion. I think it's, my only question would be how difficult it might be to access and maintain them in that location. Perhaps if you look at the site plan, or if you look at the parking level plan, you'll see how that little inset shows where the driveway actually is located. And so that plane of wall is quite a ways back. And the grade itself is falling away. So if in fact we were to plant something or install a planter above there, I would worry that it would be difficult to maintain.
Okay, it was just a suggestion.
Yeah, it's a lovely one.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any more questions from council for the applicant? Councillor Haynes?
Okay, I'll throw in my 2 pennies worth. On the front picture, as we look at that area of the wall and we see more clearly a visual description of the ramp going down, to me visually it gives me a better interpretation of the exterior there. And I realise it's set back, but is there a way of using some tonal use of colour to break it up instead of one big colour of yellow to make it tonal, maybe, and pick up some other colours that you're using?
Yeah, most certainly, and I think Councillor Murdoch had suggested that. It's a lovely suggestion, and we'll look at that. Yeah.
I was asleep.
Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Haynes. Any more questions? All right, seeing none, I'll thank the applicant and then invite members of the public to come up and speak. Welcome.
Wendy Farwell, 3074 Colquitt's Avenue. First, I'd like to speak as a member of the Community Association Board and just say that throughout this process, we've been really, really pleased with the amount of communication we've had from the architect, the developer, and the operator. They've been very responsive. They've come to meetings, they've brought materials, they've provided us with stuff, answered our questions, taken our input, which you heard about the use of the Brookman store. They've listened to us. I mean, right from the beginning, Christine was great about going around our neighborhood and looking at significant buildings in our neighborhood to make sure that this building would fit in the neighborhood. This has kind of, for me, been a model of community engagement from a developer, and it's ongoing. So, to the point where when Saanich contacted us that this meeting would occur tonight for the changes to the development permit, we actually got no information at all from Saanich about the changes, what the changes were. So we contacted Christine, and she immediately brought all the materials and plans and everything to us and talked us through and answered all our questions, which, you had many of the same questions tonight. So the Community Association has been really pleased with how they've engaged with us. Speaking as a member of the public and a person who lives right in that area, I would, however, like to see a little more communication on the site itself about why such a big delay, because it's a big hole in the ground and it's a construction site with a fence around it, and it's been there for quite a long time. And people driving by have no idea, what's going in there. Why is it taking so long? So that's the only thing. This is not from the Community Association, this is from me personally. I would like to see a little better communication on the site, and we can't wait for this one to start. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other members of the public that wish to speak? Please come forward.
Evening, Worship and Council. I am Ken Johnson. I reside at 3904 Landis Place, and my office is at 2755 Admirals Road, which you know is the Greyflower Schoolhouse. I also sit on the Saanich Heritage Foundation, which reviewed this application in September of last year, I believe it was, September 10th. And we requested a few changes be made, and the applicant has carried those out very well, and we are in favor of those, even though I can't really speak for the foundation. Certainly they're being carried out. And as well, the applicant has removed the canopy, which we weren't too happy with, now it's gone. So certainly this is a good proposal, and the Brookman store will look very much like it did from the 1930s onward. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the public that wish to speak to this item? Please come forward. Calling a second time for members of the public to speak for 998 Gorge Road West. Calling for a third time. Okay, with that, I'll close the public input period. I'd like to invite the applicant up just to answer the question about the construction delays, if I may.
Your Worship. So construction delays are actually, they're really predicated on two things. One is when we purchased the Brookman store, at the time that we bought it, it was represented that there had been a fuel oil tank, or basically there had been a one-pump gas station there for many, many years, and that the tanks had been removed and that remediation had been completed. There was an obligation to continue to monitor the groundwater for a period of 3 years to meet Ministry of Environment's requirements, and that actually didn't happen. We went back in with a different consultant and to provide the necessary reporting to basically remove this from or to clear it from the Ministry of Environment site registry. Completed a phase 1 environmental report, which led to a detailed site investigation report, which led to remediation, as in fact the site had not been extensively remediated, which led then to a completion of remediation report. And as it stands right now, This has contributed considerable time delay, and the original report had suggested that the cost of remediation for what had been interpolated, if you will, at the time would be approximately $100,000. And at this point, we're closing in at about $350,000. So that's been a large part of the delay. We now have our detailed site investigation report has been approved by an approving professional, and I'm told that later this week we are to have feedback on basically what amounts to a 700 or 800 page report, the confirmation of remediation report, and assuming that there are no more tests required, and that the approving professional is satisfied with the report, then he would make a recommendation to the Ministry of Environment that basically we would receive a complete confirmation of remediation, and that would allow us to move forward with basically unfettered construction activity on the site. In addition, the costs that we've been wrestling with all this time are significant, and so we have been through basically 4 rounds of costing to get us to a point where I believe that later this week we should be in a much closer position to where we need to get to. So basically those have conspired against us, and while it would have been ideal to have been in the ground these last few months as we seldom get an opportunity like this, unfortunately we've been on the sidelines.
Thank you for that. That all. Sorry, question? Sorry, there's another question. Councilor Dermott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. I think the question for the member of the public was if there could be more information presented on site about the reasons for the delays and what was actually going to happen.
So we basically what we've done, we have a community relations person who is who confers with the community association regularly, as well as we have her phone number on the sign on the property, and any inquiries go directly to her, and she.
I think what the individual was referring to is possibly just some signage on there that said, you know, we have had delays for the following reasons. Here's what's going to be happening. We hope in the future.
If I may, if I could get assistance with getting a permit to put that type of sign up, I would sincerely appreciate it.
Well, I think you need to check on that, but I've seen it elsewhere. Thank you.
All right, touche. All right, at this point I'll look to council for a decision. Councilor Dermott, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll move the amendment to the development permit.
Second.
Any discussion? Councilor Murdoch and then Sanders.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to thank the proponents for their presentation this evening, and I'd like to thank Ms. Barlow on behalf of the Community Association for coming to speak. I have to say that her comments are consistent with those that we heard in Committee of the Whole and public hearing when this was approved last year, that there's been a tremendous amount of engagement and consultation that's taken place with neighbors, and I think that's certainly to the credit of the proponent and will put them in good stead when this goes into operation. A very unfortunate number of circumstances that the proponent encountered as a result of the previous use on this site, and of course a number of issues related to the type of facility that is being constructed. But at the end of the day, I think we're all very pleased to see this moving forward. I know I'm very excited about, it was last year, and remain excited about this going in this location, and I know certainly from talking to neighbors during the Gorge Canada Day picnic, they're quite excited to see the fences come down and the buildings go up. Then my last comment would be that I concur that the Brookman's Corner store will actually now be closer to its original look and less, you know, I appreciate the design intent to integrate it into the building, but I think leaving it as it more of a more of its original or traditional look, it is more appropriate and certainly respectful of the original design, and I think it's an improvement on the design. So with that, I'll close off my remarks and thank the applicant again for the work in consulting the community.
Councillor Sanders, you're next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I must say that I certainly am supportive of the changes that have come forward. And too, I also compliment the applicant on the community engagement and the support of the community association. Albeit the difficulties that have made this come to the changes, I think at the end of the day, I believe it will be a better project. One is because I believe it will have less impact on the neighbors, and the neighbors that, the ones that were concerned about the size and such. I think it will be a better looking building, particularly with mechanicals being in the roof and such. And what I really, of course, like is the fact that this will certainly showcase the heritage building, the Brooklyn store, far better than the previously stated. And I believe will become a gathering place for the community, and if it's anything like the Royal Oak Schoolhouse and has some historical pictures and such in it, I think this will certainly be a nice asset to this neighborhood, and just wish it well and going forward, and we can look back on this being a good addition and for the housing use, of course. Thank you.
Thanks. All right, thank you. Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I too want to recognize this development. I've had a few people